Jasmin, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome to SUP46 and everyone else joining in. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a mix of in the audience here. We have the SUP46 members and also our friends from Scania who have some representatives here, which is always really nice to see. And today's topic is growth marketing. And Jasmin, expert on the topic, I'm going to leave the word to you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. And so nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Jasmin Yaya. I have been working for the past 10 years with helping product organization to grow. And I've helped them to make better business decisions by leading experimentation processes and sharing learnings from data. So my background is in data analysis, and I've helped them reach their full potential and growing faster. I've mostly been working with experiment teams, or sometimes they're called growth teams. And growth teams are right in between marketing and product. It's not quite only marketing, it's not quite only product, it's somewhere in between. So, and one word for that is growth marketing. I will talk a lot about what growth is to me as well. All right, so I'll just start with share my screen. Can you see my screen? Yes, thank you. All right, so I work at a company called Scilla.studio. We started this company just 6 months ago, and we're already 6 people. What we do is that we dock onto your existing company and we help you grow. We have developers, analysts, growth people, strategists, basically, and UX designers. And the intention and the desired outcome for today is I will give you an introduction to what growth and experimentation is. I will share some methods for data-driven product development and marketing. And I'll give you some examples of how to work with growth and experimentation. And we'll talk about 5 main areas. I threw one bonus one in here. So that's going to be a surprise for Sebastian and everyone. But so first of all, what is growth? I'll go through that pretty quickly. What is an experiment? This is a core part of data-driven product development and marketing. And the bonus part is the real problem product companies have. And this is the problem I see time and time again. So we'll talk a little about that, and then why experimentation is so critical and how to work with experiments. I would like to know you a little bit better. Can you show a raise of hands? Who has been working with experimentation before? Like, okay, raise of hands. We're running A/B tests every single week. Okay, who has been launching some A/B tests? All right, quite a few. Who hasn't been working with experiments at all? Okay, quite a few. Okay, good. Who's an analyst here? No one. Okay, good. All right, then I kind of know your where you come from. All right, so we'll start with what is growth. So one way I like to put it is that if we're going to double something, for 1 week, we can do it together. We'll just work harder, like, come on, everyone, it's just 1 week. We'll work twice as hard for this time, and we will double during this time. It's doable, it's just 1 week, right? But if we're gonna grow by 50 times, it's impossible for us to work 50 times as much during 1 week. So we just need to completely change the way that we work and just work smarter together. And this is very much about the growth mindset, and experimentation is a fundamental part of this. So growth is very much about the outcome, but it's also a mindset. You've probably seen some kind of variation of a marketing funnel. Like, the important part here is to understand the words and what they mean: acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral. But I don't really like the model of a funnel, because that's not how growth really works. Funnels have a clear start and a clear end. And the top of the funnel, we put stuff there, and by some magical power, that turns into gold in the bottom. So if we put more at the top, then we will get more at the bottom, right? That means that there's no conception of how to reinvest what is coming out at the bottom to the funnel to get more at the top over time. And that reinvestment mechanism is exactly what leads to compounding growth. So the fastest companies are not based on funnels. They are based on growth loops. So let's take a look on what is a growth loop. Let me just get this. Great. All right, so let's take a look at Pinterest. I think most of you know about Pinterest. And let's break down their growth loop mechanism. So first of all, a new user or a returning user finds free content on a search engine, and that drives the user to sign up or return to Pinterest. And then Pinterest activates you with content, and that content is specific and relevant. The user then saves the content or repins the existing content, which drives quality signals. And then Pinterest packages that content for search engines using quality signals, which in return brings in new users and returning users, right? Let's break this down into what it actually is. So the growth loop is about, there's something that triggers the user and we activate them with an action step. The action step in the loop must contain the action of the core product. And then that generates an output that then can be invested. And then that loop goes on and on and on so that you can get exponential growth. I'm sorry, someone hasn't unmuted. Please unmute. Please mute when you're on here. So this model helps us think about the customer journey in a way that we can generate new users. And the only way that we can build a product that creates compounding growth over time. And if we don't, we will, first of all, it will be super expensive to acquire more new users. Second of all, it will be feeling as if we're just standing still and we're gonna look for hacks that don't really deliver sustainable growth. And it's gonna be super stressful. And speaking of hacks, there's a misconception here in Europe, especially, I think, that growth is a bunch of clever marketing hacks or tactics, and it's really not. So to me, I wanted to explain to you what growth is. So I created my own 3-2-1 model for growth. So the 3 is the 3 main areas that we work in. So it's retention, monetization, acquisition. So retention is very much about what happens the first days after someone becomes a user. How do we get more users to find the core value of our product faster? It's very much about the onboarding. And when users stop experiencing value and we risk losing them, that's churn. Monetization is about how, when, and what we charge, very much about the checkout flows. And acquisition is about how do we build a product that fits the channel where the target group is. So how do we use current users' usage of the product to drive new users? That's the growth loops I was talking about earlier. And there's 2 things that we do. It's quantitative and qualitative behavior analysis. What do our users do? And why do they do that? We want to understand their motivation, their doubts, and what we can do to facilitate their decision-making process for taking action. It's very much about UX. We also want to validate our hypotheses with high tempo testing. So that's a process that we use to do as many experiments as fast as possible. I will talk a lot about this today. And because we don't really know how anyone will react to a change in our product or how they will react to a new product that we put in front of them. So we want to test that as much as possible to find out. And the one in this 3-to-1 model is about one cross-functional team. It's impossible to work with growth as an individual. You always need several different skills, and you need to be a team to create growth. So you need to have developers, UX designers, you need analysts to be able to meet your customers anywhere in the customer journey. So that's the 3-to-1 model for growth, and it's basically what Scilla.studio's expertise is in. All right, so we'll move on to what the real problem product companies have. No matter what kind of product company you are, basically all of them have this problem. You are currently losing 80% of your marketing spend within 7 days. What? Yeah, so the fastest growing companies, they know that retaining new users is key for exponential growth, not just acquiring new users. So the first 7 days after a user is acquired holds the utmost potential for almost any stakeholder who wants to see a better return on their investment. And that's why you need to grow your business faster than the competition. And this is what I mean about growth being right in between marketing and right in between the product, because the first few days of someone's using a product, it's not quite marketing, it's not quite product. Who is actually in charge of the onboarding? It's not really clear usually in a company. So a typical customer journey could look like this. Starting in the bottom, goes like first exposure to product or brand, then they're learning about the value of the product, becoming a user or customer, that's the conversion, the first login experience, the first week, the first month, retained user, their biggest fans, promoters. We all want that, right? But typically 80% of our users are lost here. So that means that 80% of your marketing spend is also lost here. So yet this particular part of the customer journey is often overlooked or simply just treated as an afterthought. A lot of times company owners or product people will come to me or Scilla.studio and they will say, hey, we have a problem. We're not having any retention. And they also come with a solution. So either they will tell me, yes, this is the problem. We have seen this problem and we think that we need a better marketing strategy. Come and do better marketing for us. Can you do some hacks, please? Or they will tell me, because I'm also a growth product manager, they will tell me, can we do some growth hacks in the product for those that are staying, like for those that have been staying for 30 more days, basically, that's what they're saying. But both of those solutions are wrong. First of all, you're not gonna want to pour in more traffic into a product that is not retaining your users within the first 7 days. You're just gonna get the same result. And you don't wanna create features for the users that you actually have been able to retain. They're so few. So I'll explain this in many ways as we go on, but usually this is the problem, and the problem is that they don't see the right solution to this. So here's a quote from Andrew Chen from Andreessen Horowitz. Users try out a lot of apps, but decide which ones they want to stop using within the first 3 to 7 days. For decent apps, the majority of the users retained for 7 days stick around much longer. The key to success is to get the users hooked during that critical first 3 to 7 day period. And I'll show you some charts of the average retention curve for apps. This is from Qapital Mobile Intelligence Report. Pretty sad, right? And next chart is retention curve for the top 10, 50, 100 apps. So that's where we all want to be, but we end up not being these. And I have another way of showing this, and I call this the most tragic chart in tech. So basically we have 1,000 visits. Out of those, only 200 people sign up. So right then and there, a lot of people are lost. And then we have some that go through the onboarding. This is day 0. And then day 1, which is the day after they had signed up and done the onboarding, we have a few people coming back. Day 7, even fewer. And day 30, almost none, like 20 people. And this is why I'm talking about the solution of doing different marketing is wrong, and also developing new features for the day 30 or more users is also wrong. And so what we want to do instead is we want to have a chart that kind of looks like this. Then we've grown our retention by 10 times. Now imagine that growth rate that you would see if you would optimize your 7-day retention by 20% or 50% or even more. So if you don't know your retention curve, I suggest that you go and just find out the numbers, the data, so that you can create a retention curve that looks like this. So the y-axis is number of users, and the x-axis is the different steps or the number of days after sign up. And the benefits of optimizing the 7-day retention, there's a lot of them. So you get happier users, you will have better profitability, you will have lower risk, and you will even get more insights. You will learn so much more about your users. So, and the best way to solve your 7-day retention is experimentation. So let's start with talking about what an experiment is, first of all, so that we all talk about the same thing. So there are basically 3 types of experiments. First of all, there's surveys or polls. And I mean, they come in all shapes and sizes. You will know when you see one. It's anything from asking someone if they found what they were looking for, to rating a service, or maybe you're doing just a survey like this, or maybe you're doing a usability test where you put a customer or a user in front of your product, you film them, you record them while they are using this, and they are asking them questions or giving them tasks to do this. All of these are basically common ways where you ask your customers questions and they will answer. And these tests usually give you clue why a customer did something. Then we have a painted door test. These are also called smoke tests sometimes, or ghost tests. There's a lot of different cool names for this, but I'll give you an example. I've worked with Spotify for many years as an employee, but also as a contractor. In 2016, Spotify wasn't the only streaming service anymore, and they wanted to differentiate themselves. And the difference between Spotify and other streaming services wasn't that big. So the catalog or the functions were pretty much the same, and the play button wasn't better looking on Spotify. So why should someone stay a premium user, right? So a big bet was bundling, so that the hypothesis was that if Spotify Premium users were offered more value in their subscription, they would stay premium users. So we wanted to test the idea rather than building out the whole thing. So instead of, what partnerships should we go through with and stuff like that, that's a lot of work to get into a full project, right? So we ended up doing a painted door test. The target group was young users in US and UK, and there were a few partnership options. We had seen a big amount of data in users creating meditation and mindfulness playlists. Mind you, this is 2016, that was pretty new. So maybe we should partner with a meditation app. So we chose Headspace, which is a meditation app, and they were quite small at the time. E-commerce was another bet that we wanted to research, and we had tested headphones and speakers, and we wanted to test it some more. So we chose both speakers and Urban Ears headphones. And since we were targeting the younger audience in US and UK, we also wanted to test something else than audio retail. So we just did some retail brand. And for all of these four ideas, we made banners. We were 3 people in one morning, and we created super simple banners for these 4. It was like, for Spotify premium users, get 20% off on Headspace or Bose speakers or stuff like that. And these banners would be shown on Instagram, Facebook, or other websites. So not in Spotify, because this is for Spotify premium users. And each ad was shown to 50,000 Spotify premium users on different websites when they were surfing. So first of all, we measured the amount of people that had seen it that clicked. And on the other side of the click, we actually had this. So it would say, sorry, this is not available in your market right now, wasn't available in any market right then. Sign up if you want to be the first to know when it is. So with a click, we could measure the interest, but with the sign up, we could measure the intent, the actual intent that people wanted to do this. And maybe you're wondering if you're allowed to do this. And we asked our legal, and they were like, okay, we will back you up on this. So make sure that you have your legal on your side. I don't know what these companies would have done if they would have found out, but I know that if we would have gone through with these 4 companies, we wouldn't have had this done in even a year, I think. So can you guess which partnership that got the most signups? Can just unmute. Have a guess.
Headspace. Is a guess.
Right. Any other guesses?
I'm guessing Headspace as well.
Yeah, it was Headspace. Almost no one wanted to sign up for the retail brand. I'm not going to say what retail brand it is, but it's a pretty big Swedish company that is a retail brand. Almost no signups, and that was pretty shocking for the whole team. We thought that young US, UK users would want to have 20% discount off of that. Wasn't a big interest for the e-commerce audio stuff, but yes, Headspace was very big. This was pretty shocking because mindfulness wasn't that big in 2016. It's really big right now, especially the last year. But this allowed us to save a lot of time and a lot of energy. I think all of us would have been super, super, super bummed out if we would have put in like a year of, I don't know, like meetings back and forth just to get the partnership right, and then getting to the result that almost no one wanted, the option. So what we actually ended up doing was that we contacted Headspace. We showed them the data that we had. We said, this is the amount of users that we've tested this on. Our users want your product. Would you like to have our users, basically? And they were like, yes. They were tiny back then, and they were super happy to do this. And it took around 3 months to get this rolling out. It was a bunch of legal stuff, basically, that had to be going out, not so much technical stuff. And it turned out to be one of the most successful partnerships that Spotify has done. So one morning, 3 hours, 3 people to test this out. This is what a painted door test is, just to test what people actually will take action on, not asking them, are you interested in doing that? Because if we would have asked people, they would have said yes. But in this way, we could actually measure their actual intent. All right, so the last kind of experiment I want to talk about is A/B tests. They measure, if surveys and polls measure why people are doing things, A/B test is measuring what customers are doing. So lots of quantitative data is collected this way. And it's also the kind of experiments that I will be focusing most on today. So basically, this is a very common way of looking at A/B tests. Half the traffic sees version A that has a green button and a green display, and B has blue, and then you measure the conversion rate. So in this case, blue won because it had a conversion rate of 65%. So you can also test load times, functionality, copy, images, stuff like that. So basically what we want to know is that if we make a change, what's the effect that we will get? And I'll show you a bad way of doing this. So imagine if we have a website in January and we make a change, and in February it looks different. So there's a huge problem with this when we're comparing before and after, because there could have been a number of changes in there. It could have been different weather, the weekdays, product changes that we did. Maybe we had some press that drove a lot of traffic, or campaigns. We did some content changes. There was a huge viral thing in social media that was trending. So we don't really know what change brought the different effect. And so we want to know that if we make this change, we will have a statistical significance in the effect. And basically, we let half of a traffic see version A, half of a traffic see version B, then we can measure the conversion rate of A versus B. And with the A/B test, the change exists simultaneously with the two groups. And therefore, we minimize the number of variables that can affect the outcome. So a statistical significance is when the result of an experiment is so reliable that if we were to run it again, we'd most likely have the same result again. And there's basically 3 different situations where you want to A/B test. First of all, it's pure optimization, like what version gives the best effect, changing an experience that's already there. Maybe it's the copy, maybe it's some visual element. Second of all, we want to check what release is going to have an effect. So like if we have a package of changes and we don't want to have negative or unexpected effects, we can A/B test those packages of releases together. And the third one is my favorite. So validating hypotheses. So A/B tests are perfect for this. This is the primary reason to work with A/B tests, and we will dive deeper into this one. So this is called validated learning. So validate.
Yes? Jasmin, we have 15 minutes left of the presentation.
Thank you. All right, so we will learn if the underlying assumption is true or false. All right, so I also want to talk about the hierarchy. You can think of your hypotheses as well. So perhaps your organization has a big bet in the product strategy, and it's a bigger picture. You have aligned your development around, and you want to ship this bet. Well, you would have to build a lot of things, and to build it fully would mean months of development or more. And the problem is that you don't even know if this is the right bet, right? So it's just an assumption, and the context in which you are operating changes fast. So you don't even know what you don't know. And you can break a bet down into different hypotheses. If we do this, then we will learn if our assumption is true or false. And even a hypothesis can be tested in different ways. So try to think of your tests as the smallest thing that you can test. And can you test the hypothesis in different ways? And within what bet in the company will this fit? So this is a recap of part 3. So what is an experiment? There's different types of experiments. We talked about statistical significance and validated learning. And we also talked about the hierarchy of bets, hypotheses, and tests. So part 4 is why experimentation is so critical. And there's usually no problem coming up with the idea. Just imagine that all of these dots is an idea each. And the difficult thing is to find the right ideas. Is it this one? Is it this one? Or is it this one that will take us to our goal? And companies that continuously work with experiments to validate their hypotheses sometimes succeed in getting the expected result. So by experiment, I mean testing ideas before even implementing them in full scale. It could be an A/B test or just testing the ideas on your target group to learn as much as possible about it. So I'll show you a few companies that are experimenting at a large scale, and I want you to guess their win rate. So what amount of their experiments actually has a desired result? Let's start with Microsoft. Can you have a guess? How many % of their tests that they are running have a desired result?
40%.
All right, any more guesses?
7.
Any more guesses?
Yeah, 10. Not a Microsoft fan.
All right, so they actually have a 30% win rate. What about Pinterest?
60.
55.
All right, anyone else? They're at 30 as well. Slack as well. Facebook, they're running, at any given time, they are running 22,000 tests. Can you guess their win rate? 30. I saw someone signing that. All right, so they are at 15%. What it tells me is that they are innovating more. Like they are testing crazier ideas. Their win rate will be lower, but they will innovate more. And when they actually have a win, they will push their goal much further than if they would take a safe bet, right? And Google is down at 10. Google runs 300,000 experiments per year. So the wilder your ideas are, you will have a lower win rate. And the key to experiment is just to experiment and not rolling out as huge projects, because betting on the right idea is hard. So basically what all these companies that are experimenting a lot have learned is that 1/3 of all ideas have a negative effect. It's actually hurting the business, but they are learning that pretty fast. So that's okay. They didn't roll it out as a huge project. 1/3 of all ideas give no effect, no difference in effect, but what they learned. And just 1/3 of all ideas give the desired result. So what this means is that out of all the ideas that you have, only about 1/3 of the ideas will generate desired results. And which ones you will only find out if you test them. And I have my own example as well. I calculated this. So I've done over 1,400 experiments with one of my clients in one team. So that's an average of 18 experiments per week for one team. What do you think my team's win rate is?
30%. No, 35%.
31%. That was a pretty good guess. So yeah, basically I'm at Slack's and Microsoft's level. So I also wanted to talk about Twitter's growth in 2010 till 2012. In 2010, they actually almost doubled from 30 to 54 million users. Not so bad, but they wanted to grow even faster. So back then they were launching one test every other week. So instead of doing that, they started to launch 10 experiments per week. And that had undoubtedly played an important role in their speed of exponential growth. And almost all top companies in Silicon Valley have established their own growth teams, and growth teams work with experiments. So everything from Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Uber, SurveyMonkey, Airbnb, Slack, even Tesla. And growth teams are shipping many experiments as fast as possible. And why they do that is because they want to learn faster. And here's a quote from Eric Ries, the writer of the Lean Startup. He wrote this book in 2010, so it's not something new. The only way to win is to learn faster than anyone else. He said that in 2012. So I'm not talking about new things here. It's 10 years or more old things. Here's another reason why you should experiment. So, I mean, it obviously helps the bottom line. This is a report from Optimizely that they reported that 88% of large companies surveyed reported seeing a positive bottom line improvement from experimentation, and over 40% saw over 10% improvement. I think with the experimentation system that I will show you today, that improvement can be even greater. So it will help you to learn more about both large and small bets. And our ultimate goal as professionals is, of course, to create growth for our product and our company. And in order to create that growth, we need to make a number of different product, marketing, engineering, design decisions that will help us to grow. And making that decision is the hard part. So we can do that either based off of intuition or based off of data. Each have a lot of problems with them. Let's start with the problem about intuition. So intuition is built from having lots of repetition involving lots of feedback cycles so that we build that intuition around that thing over a long period of time. But intuition can be very misleading because it's based off of a lot of human biases and errors. So first of all, we tend to overestimate the probability that our idea will just work just because it's our own idea. We might say something like, this idea is definitely going to increase our growth. Second of all, the second thing is that we overestimate the potential that a certain initiative will have just to justify that idea. We might say something like, this is going to have a huge impact. And third of all, we also tend to inflate things in hindsight and over time. In other words, we inflate the success of our idea just to justify it in hindsight, why we did it, or we overplay that we know why something worked when we really don't. And we might say something that that initiative did have a lot of things to do with it. It was something else that didn't work. And the fourth big challenge with intuition is that over time, as things change with our customers, business and other components of our product or our intuition that we initially built up tends to become more disconnected without us even knowing it. So we might say something like, we should do what we did a couple of years ago. That really worked. So then you typically hear that we need to make decisions based off of data, but that also has a lot of limitations. So let's look at how data can be misleading. First of all, the past is not the future. And when we look at data, we tend to look at historical data. We can build a really great model based off of that historical data, but using that data in order to project the future might look like it's actually much more difficult than it seems. And we tend to interpret data in a very subjective way. People with very strong held views can bend the data to support their story rather than reading the data for what it really is. And third of all is that we like to summarize information with data, but in doing so, we tend to lose a lot of the nuance and the context that gives the data actual meaning. So what should we do? We need a problem-solving tool to help us make decisions and avoid the various traps of using just intuition or just data to make all of these different decisions. And that problem-solving tool is experimentation. Experimentation is critical because it improves our ability to make key decisions by refining our intuition with objective customer data. And this is something that we can build off over time. And three areas we want to learn more about is, first of all, our users, like what motivates our users, where do they spend their time, how do they explain the problem that we solve, what are their fears. We also want to learn about the product, how do users get in and out of the product, how do they change their behaviors, why do they change their behaviors, why don't they change their behaviors, and we also want to learn about our channels. How do our channels work? how does Facebook algorithm work? How does Google decide what content to rank for, and etc. So the faster we can learn about these 3 areas, the more we can manipulate the levers that can contribute to growth. And we can get a higher win rate in our experiments even.
Jasmin, we have 5 minutes left.
Thank you.
For the Q&A.
So there are a bunch of hurdles to experimentation, and I see this time and time again in organizations. So the first big hurdle is that there are culture barriers to experimental thinking. So in this type of decision making requires another type of information gathering, and it requires the use of experimentation as a problem-solving tool. The second thing is that there's all of these beliefs and common myths that undermine the potential impact of experimentation. And the third is that organizations take a narrow and ad hoc approach to experimentation rather than setting up a strategic system that can continuously deliver value. So here's a recap of the 4th part to why experimentation is critical. Only 1/3 of your assumptions will give a positive result. That's why it's better to test them out rather than to build them out in full scale first. And then second of all, experimentation helps us make better decisions over time. Because we're humans, we have a lot of biases and we just make bad decisions. Okay, so the 5th part is basically how you get started with this. So there's a few steps to this. First, you need to understand your customer's problem. I'm really convinced this is where we need to start. And then we can create a solution for that problem. So just to understand the problem is that I like to think most people have this problem. This is a problem that very few people have. This is a problem that makes my life a lot worse. And this is a problem that is just a nuance. Of course, we want to solve this problem. And we want this problem to be frequent, right? So when we've nailed what this problem is, we can also look into our data. So to do that, we need to set and track our goals, and then we can identify our customer's problem within our data. We also need to set and track our goals if we want to experiment. Have you heard about North Star metric? Raise of hands. Okay, not that many. Can you see that this is a starry sky that is kind of sped up and moving? Yes. Can you see that it looks like one star is still? That's the North Star. The North Star, or Polstjärna in Swedish, the North Star is the one that is based off of the North Pole. It appears as if it's standing still. And back in the days when sailors were navigating, they would want to find the North Star, because if they found where north was, they would be able to navigate right and get to their goal. So this is a metaphor of what metric you want to have as an overall metric in your company. So to find your North Star metric, you need to understand the value that your most loyal customers get from using your product. An example is Airbnb. The most loyal users value that they get from their product is number of nights booked. It delivers value to both the hosts and to the guests. So the more value you get, the more nights you will book. It's not about the number of likes they get on social media or the number of visits that they get to their website, right? It's about the number of nights booked. It's pretty hard to unveil your North Star metric, but it's a great exercise to do. So then you just need to find out your North Star metric and then identify the steps that lead up to that. And everyone in the company should be aligning around those goals. All right, so then you also need some experimentation tools. You need some kind of infrastructure to be able to do experiments. Back in the day, small companies could not do experiments, but now there's a bunch of tools that you can use, and just start with something. It's not that important that you use the right tools. You're gonna want to change the tools as you go, but start with something. It's not gonna be perfect from the get-go.
Can I jump in with a question there on the experimentation or measurement? How how many of those are blocked because of ad blocking or something like that? Can you still trust the data that comes from those tools?
It's going to be even worse now with iOS 14.5. Yeah, and you're not going to be able to rely on cookies as much. But as long as you have a service where people log in, you can track your data because that's your own data. You're not using a third party to do that. So just to answer it in a short way. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so what you need to do then is to generate and score your ideas. One other thing you need to do is to generate ideas and then turn them into hypotheses. So I bet that if we do this, then we will increase or decrease this number. So this is how you should create your ideas or hypotheses. And then you want to score them. So I usually like to use this prioritization model. Each row is a hypothesis. You write the definition of a minimum test, like what can we get done in half a day? What can we get done in 1 day? Like, don't make it that big. And then we score them based off of impact, like how big of an impact will this get us? Maybe that's number of signups or acquisition or something like that. Ease, how easy is it? How much resources will this take us? Do we have to put money on it? Will it take us 3 weeks to build this? And learning, if this is an area we haven't explored before, there's a lot of benefits of learning more about this area. And then you get a score. So it could look something like this. But then as you're learning more, you will get more data. So you can add a few more columns. I like to add confidence. So the more confidence you have, the more data you have, basically. Is it just like someone called a customer service last week and that told us? Or do we have data that 80% out of all people that do this also do that? That's a lot of confidence. And I would also like to add high risk, especially if you're in a bigger organization. And what high risk means is that it's about when you are doing a test, but then out of somewhere, someone from C-level management comes and says, no, we can't do this. Then you've just ended up wasting a lot of time, but you didn't learn anything or you didn't create any impact for the company. And this often happens with bigger companies. And what this means is that you need to have some allies with the C-level managers. And for C-level managers, they need to have some guts and don't chicken out, basically. All right, so those are the things that I would like to add, and this is how it can look. So here we can see that, okay, the hypothesis 1 has a score of 88%. Of course, we're going to start with that one. Maybe we won't even test hypothesis 3 because it has such a low score. All right, so now we only have basically one thing left to do. We have identified the right problem. We have tracked our goals. We have generated and scored our ideas. Now we want to start the build, measure, learn loop. That's the amount of times you experiment per week. And with the team I'm with right now, we launched 24 experiments just the past week. So in 1 week, we went through this build, measure, learn loop 24 times. And if you beat that, please let me know. And I wanna talk to you guys. So that's kind of my record. And imagine if your teams would launch this much, you would learn so much every single week. So basically you build a product, you measure that, you get data, you learn from that, you get more ideas that you can build and so on. So this is the summary of the experimentation process. And I just have a few more slides. It's basically a summary. So I want you to remember a few things. I think you can read this out yourself, but most ideas will not give you the desired result. And that's why we want to experiment. It's going to be super expensive for you if you run a project for 3 months and then that didn't work. So every third thing is going to work basically. So, and always think like, what can we do in half a day? Don't make it that big. I have some suggestion of books as well and some podcasts. And if you understand Swedish, you can listen to my podcast. It's Datadrivet. Yeah. And if you need our help, if you need some coaching, if you have anything on your mind, just get in touch. Let's talk. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Jasmin. Really nice. Thank you so much. We have a couple of more minutes for Q&A. I think it's fine that we take those 4 minutes for Q&A. So if you have any questions, get them ready while we launch the poll we want to measure as well, of course. So there's only 3 questions, I guess. 3 questions that we would love for you all to answer to help us improve the workshop sessions. And can you launch the survey, Kat? And while you're answering those questions, Jasmin, I have a question. Does anyone want to jump in before me, by the way?
Can I just one thing about the feedback? So
Yep.
the last question, there is an option where you can choose other. Feel free to write any suggestions in the chat so we can keep track on it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Ingrid, shoot.
Yeah, so I have a question. I read a bit about this and I really love this presentation. But if you have an app that requires a new release on App Store to be able to test release something new, we don't know really how to A/B test or how to run experiments in the app. Do you have any input on that?
I think what you would benefit from is to implement an A/B testing tool in your app, and your developers should know how to do this, or try to figure out how to get this done. Otherwise, it's going to be too much manual work for you.
Okay, so there are kind of out of the box tools for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Fredrik has a question.
Yeah, I have a question on volume or specifically statistical significance. I mean, usually the way I know the term growth is 1,000. This usually gives some significance, and I know it's not all stats and science, but do you go by that number when picking a volume to make a decision which you can rerun, or is it different depending on what you test, like signups, paying customers, trials? Yeah.
So it's all based off of basically 3 different parameters to have a statistical significance. So basically you want a statistical significance of 95% or more, which means that if we were to run this test again, 95% probability that we will get the same result again. So it's basically what baseline conversion do you have? Like if you only have a conversion rate of 1%, that's one parameter. How much do you want to grow it by? Like if you have 1% now and you're challenging this status quo with another version, like version B is gonna increase this by 30%, 50%, 10%. And how much statistical significance do you want? Are you fine with 95%, or do you want a higher statistical significance? And there are great calculators for this. I really like Optimizely's A/B testing calculator. Just Google for that, and you can just fill in these things, and it will give you a number. So if you have a higher conversion rate, like maybe you have a conversion rate of 20%, you will require fewer people that see version A and fewer people that see version B. But if you only have a 1% conversion rate, you would need a bunch of people to, like, it's you can't just bump into 10 random people on the street and get their answers. That's likely not gonna represent the majority. So just go to Optimizely's A/B testing calculator and you will get that. So I always strive for statistical significance, not looking so much at the actual numbers. Marlena.
Yeah, thank you for a great presentation. So my question is, we are currently working for B2B, and of course the traffic is much lower. So what is like the minimal amount of traffic you would need and I mean 20% conversion rate is super high. So if we can be more like average, say 2%, I guess that's more an average conversion rate. So
2% conversion rate. And how much is the uplift? How much do you think you can change? Like, can you get that 2% to be 4%?
I think so, yes, because we are not even experimenting with the specific landing pages so far, because we're just building up the traffic, but we have very specific target group.
All right, I'll just share my.
There will be volume.
Sorry to interrupt you. We're out of time. I'm not going to shut down this conversation. I'm going to leave Jasmin a chance to answer, of course. But I just want to say thank you to everyone for jumping in, and we'll share the deck afterwards, of course, like always. And we'll get all her notes and her contact details. And thanks again, Jasmin, for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's circle back and let you answer the question.
All right, I'll just share my screen real quick. So this is the A/B testing tool that I was talking about from Optimizely. So if you have a 2% conversion rate right now and you think you can get it to 4% and you're fine with 95% statistical significance, then you would need 710 people to see version A and 710 people to see version B. If you think you can manage this, this is perfect. If you want to shut down the conversation about 95 being like 5% off, you can always increase this to 99. I like to do that. And then you just need 30 people more. So if you think you can get this within a couple of weeks, maybe you need to drive even more traffic to these landing pages. So if you can do that, then you're fine. But if you think you can only grow it by 50%, then you suddenly need 3,000 people. So it's all based off of these three variables, basically. All right, any more questions?
No? You can always reach out to Jasmin later. I have a couple of questions, but we'll save them for the fireside chat that we'll jump into in a little bit. Which you all, if you want to, can follow on YouTube and Facebook. I don't know if we can get the LinkedIn thing to work, but at least on those channels, we'll see what happens. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining, and see you around. Thanks, Jasmin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It was great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tack så mycket.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.